Hey, Shawn.
Hey, Mark.
Welcome to Mindset.
Thank you for having me.
This is the Mindset Factory where we build mindsets.
Very nice.
Yep. Sometimes a little hammering, a little sawing off here and there.
I can't believe you have me here to help influence minds. That's probably not the best use of your time, but thank you for having me.
No, this is wonderful. So we're here to talk about your new book. And have you written a book before? The first one?
It's the first one.
First one. Do you see another one coming, or hard to tell?
It's funny. When I finished this one, I was actually shocked at how emotional I got at the end of completing it.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of finished that last chapter, and you hit the period on the last sentence, and you sit back, and I'd never envisioned ever writing a book.
Right.
It wasn't something that I'd had as a life goal or anything like that. It was something that over time kind of came to a point where I decided maybe I can do this, and then I started to do it, and then I completed it. And I was kind of blown away that I got to that point where I actually I wrote a book.
You wrote a book.
And initially when I got done, I'm like, I am never doing that again.
Right. Yeah.
But it's funny because now ideas just start to come to me a little bit more like, somebody should really talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
We should, put some thinking around that down. And it's funny, I've had a few professional associates that I love and have worked with for years, and they're saying, "Hey, maybe collaborate. Let's talk about some other things." So I don't know. Maybe in the future there's another book in the future. My wife would probably kill me. More because it's one of those things that it takes time, and it takes time, unfortunately, away from the family and stuff like that. Fortunately, I'm a very early riser, and most of my family is not. So Saturday mornings up at 6 o'clock and sitting at my dining room table and working on getting through a chapter or two was helpful. But then I know by 10:30 in the morning I need to be done because I've got family responsibilities I have to take care of. But it's maybe. Maybe's the answer.
I love that answer.
Yeah, that was a very long-winded way to come around to a maybe.
Maybe, yeah, that's great. And so, so everybody, awesome book, you can tell. I loved it. Lots of sticky notes, and for everybody who knows me, the sticky notes I need to replenish now. So I always like to ask the question of why now? What was it that was the driver? Like, what was it? It was like, oh my gosh, the world needs this book, or something came about that said, this needs to be here. What was that for you?
Sure. So I'm going to say over the last 3 to 4 years, I've had a couple of people that I work with and client partners that have, and you need to think about writing a book. Like the way that you think about this is different than other people. The way that you approach this isn't something I've heard before, and a lot of people benefit from it, and I've always dismissed it. It was always like, thank you, that's a very kind thing to say. I'm not writing a book. And one person in particular, Steve Rosen, who's head of our new business development team at Aloysius Butler & Clark, where I work, he's been in a lot of conversations where I've been presenting information to potential leads and stuff. And Steve multiple times said to me, Shawn, you really need to think about writing a book. And I dismissed it. And then last year, I had the privilege of attending RecFest, which is, I jokingly say it's like the Lollapalooza of talent attraction. It's an outdoor festival. It's in Tennessee, in Nashville, and it's like 2,500 people that attended. There's 4 different stages. There's live presentations going on at every stage, and it was outstanding. We didn't go to exhibit. I went to attend, and I'm sitting in a lot of the different presentations, and what I'm noticing is nobody's really talking about how do you attract the hardest of hard to fill. And so I think there's been a lot of people that talk about how do you attract salespeople into T-Mobile, right? Yeah. And get a bunch of people to sit in the mall at the kiosk and sell cell phones, right?
Yeah, yes.
But there's nobody talking about what do you do institutionally to help bring a neurosurgeon into a rural area? What do you do to find those really high-end technical people that are needed in certain companies? when they've already got 10 offers from other groups, right? And so it really started to hit me in that environment where I really looked at it as this is where talent attraction is going. This is where the conversations about the future of talent attraction are happening. Nobody's talking about what to do to build an organization that's going to make them attractive to the most skilled and most needed talent.
Mm-hmm.
So I got on the plane to fly home, and on the flight from Tennessee to Philadelphia, by the time I landed, I had all the chapters outlined, and I started thinking about what content needs to be there for this. And I landed in Philadelphia, and I said, maybe I could write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I spent the next couple of months and started really just adding into the outline. Start writing. This should be in this chapter. This should be in this chapter. And I would start to put in notes about what stories to potentially include in different areas. But really, the purpose of why now is there are a lot of factors that I'm seeing that talent attraction is going to become far more difficult over the next several years.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, right now people are struggling for work. Totally get that. That's going to change. We saw a touch of it. So there was a period during the Great Resignation where every organization was like, we can't get help. Right? We saw a touch of it at that point. But I'm going to be really surprised, Mark, if we're not there kind of long term in the next 5 to 10 years. The reproductive rate, for example, in the United States is down to 1.6. 2.1 just to remain stable as a workforce. And, some people will say, well, AI will help with that and this will help with that. But, AI is not going to take the job of the people, creative thinkers that are having to do this really high-end work.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's certain things there that, yeah, it'll help alleviate some of it, but we're going to be in a real crunch situation for attracting talent.
Yeah.
We need to start thinking about it differently.
Yeah, I love that. And so I was going to go down the pathway of like kind of why organizations, because I think throughout your book you talk a lot about there's a little bit of organizational ego. There's a little bit of like leadership saying, oh, well, who wouldn't want to work here or who wouldn't want to live here?
That's natural, though. That's completely
natural.
We're
proud of our organizations.
100%.
Right?
So,
yeah.
and I think especially people that may have only been in one organization for maybe they came out of school, they started working there, and they've been there for 20 years. They love working there. Why wouldn't everybody else love working here?
Mm-hmm.
And I fell into that. Early on in my career, I fell into that. Love Geisinger Health System. I was very excited to get the job there, coming back to the area after I had lived in Philadelphia. And there was absolutely I knew I had competed with like 85 people to get my job, right? And I got the job, and there's a pride. Who wouldn't want to work here? And you think that mentality kind of goes across the board for all of the positions, but then you start to recognize and realize that there's a little bit of bias there that that you need to overcome, and I think there is value in understanding that bias, not falling into that trap.
And I think that's a key that one of the things, lots of reasons why I loved your book. I think absolutely, you talked about it, you wanted it to be easy to read. I think it reads extremely well. I mean, I think that as a professional looking at, sometimes when professionals, we look at books and we're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to fit that into my life to read a book? I know it sounds really sad, but that's the truth. I
get it.
I
completely get it.
Right?
Completely get it.
When the book came in, I literally just kind of, it's like a smooth read, right? That's a weird way to talk about a book, but
well, I appreciate it because I didn't want it to be something that was arduous. There is one chapter that I think get a little bit difficult to get through, but I thought it was critically important, and that's the chapter about building the business case.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I think you start talking numbers or start thinking about something that a lot of times is more on the EQ side.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to get to that point where we can talk about talent attraction and what it means financially for organizations. That chapter, I think people may look at and be like, this one's a little harder to get through. But there's some great stories in that one too, and how that kind of came because so many organizations, we're so focused on data right now, and rightfully so.
Mhm.
I mean, we should allow data to help lead and guide the conversation. That's never going to go anywhere. But there are certain things that are really hard to prove financially.
Mhm.
So, understanding how to turn talent attraction into what does it mean financially, I think that was probably, if you had difficulty with a specific chapter, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the one that was it.
Yeah, no, I think I want to talk a little bit about the tactical as compared to being distinct from the kind of building new mental models, right? How to think about this effort, this need for an organization as
Sure.
compared to, and I hope you're okay. I say it this way, but I definitely don't see this book as like a how-to guide.
Sure.
What I see it as is before we get to the how-to, what we want to do is prepare you for the how to be thinking, right? Is that a fair assessment?
The how to be thinking and the why to be thinking.
Why to be thinking?
So yeah, there are certain points in here. One of the things that I had a coworker, lovely guy, Gary Sardi, who would always say easy is right.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of set me back in my seat the first time he said it. I heard him say it a couple of times. I'm like, Gary, fill me in. What exactly are you thinking on that? And he filled me in on the concept that, when you're going through something and you're going through a process, the easier it is, the more right you feel like it is for you to do.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's 100% true,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Any difficult task, if you can find a way to make it easy, it's going to be like, that must have been the right thing to do. So it's more about understanding the importance of making something easy than it is to give a detailed explanation of how to make that thing easy. Because I think every organization has to look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah, I know it's for our work in systems thinking, one of the things that we look at is it takes a lot of work to make something complex, right? Easy, right? And so you don't sell yourself short. Like you really are building into helping people understand to deal with the complexity of what you're talking about in the book and about being attractive. And when you get it to that point where it's like, oh, it's easy, there's a lot of thinking behind the scenes that made that happen.
There is. I mean, we've had situations before where we a lot of times we'll do that candidate pathway testing. And we'll do the mystery shopping candidate pathway. And it's unbelievable when we reveal it back to the client. We had one that the applicant tracking system, once you come onto their website, you've read about the organization, you've read the job posting, you hit the apply button. It took 45 minutes on a desktop computer to complete the application process. Nobody's going to do that, and also know that 70% of the traffic is coming in on a mobile phone.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever tried to fill out a form on a mobile phone?
Oh yeah, it's fun. Love it.
The greatest change or improvement that they would ever see is figuring out how to eliminate that 45-minute application process and giving people the opportunity to talk to a recruiter to ask questions.
Yeah.
Somebody's probably willing to do that 45 minutes if they talk to somebody and somebody says, you're a really great candidate for this. We are absolutely going to want to talk to you more. Can you fill out this 45-minute process? Then, yeah, I'll do it. But asking me that's a huge commitment to ask of me before I know whether I'm even remotely qualified.
Yes, yeah.
So.
And let's talk about it. That's a good kind of introduction to this idea that I think your book is also about perspective. And would it surprise you if I told you use the word perspective 150 times in the book?
That's frightening.
I didn't count them. I'm just saying.
You may be right. So multiple times on every page. I wouldn't be surprised by that because it is a matter of getting us to change our perspective, and that's one of the things that it's interesting from the perspective. I came out of marketing,
right,
and my whole concept of marketing is always put yourself in the consumer's shoes, right? But I'm applying marketing to talent attraction. And when you're in human resources shoes, it's never or rarely about the candidate's shoes. They're always thinking about the organization itself. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest fallacies and issues that we can have because it's really easy to write a job that's, well, I need this person, they have to be able to lift 50 pounds. They have to be able to do this. We had one client at one time that started off their their job postings for nurses and providers with something along the lines of a capable provider able to. That is the least attractive thing that you could ever possibly say to a doctor to try to attract them. Are you capable? And what person's going to say, oh, I'm not capable? You know what I mean? Right. So getting people to understand that you need to develop your language and develop the way that you're looking at your organization from the perspective of why does it matter the person outside?
Yeah.
It's not about us. Yeah. It's about them and what joining us may actually be.
Yes, and I think it's a good place to kind of, now that people are listening, they're a couple minutes into our conversation, kind of resetting. It's like our goal is to bring in and attract people to our organization. And so this idea of really considering it from their perspective is important, right? It's what are their needs, right? And how can their needs be met by being part of our group and coming, right?
What does it mean from, career advancement? What does it mean for work-life balance? What does it mean for, the Mondays? Or, when you wake up on Monday morning and I've got to go to work, all of those things are the things that are going through their heads. And it's not what we typically think about within our own organization as the things that we should be communicating about.
Right. So let's talk about perspectives and generations. I think you make a really good case in this book. I read the book and it reminded me that whenever I'm looking to expand, I'm not hiring me. Right. I'm that person is most likely not going through the process the way that I went through the process. Right. Yeah. Isn't using the same tools, isn't looking in the same places.
They're not even trusting the same resources.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it's fascinating that we have this idea first and foremost that we establish, be perspectival, right? Okay. Be able to accept perspectives and see perspectives that are different than yours or your organization's. And then the next thing is just, I just think you do it so well. You talk about Gen Z, you talk about millennials. And if I'm correct, I think what you're saying is like the bulk of people being hired are falling into those generations.
Yeah. At this point, millennials and Gen Z, believe it or not, they're up to almost 75% of the workforce. It's kind of frightening. I'm Gen X, and honestly, the boomers, there's still some that are hanging on in certain roles, but they're pretty much kind of showing themselves the door at this point, right, to retire away. But we have to understand that millennials and Gen Z, they've witnessed a lot of things. They've experienced a lot of things. Chances are they don't necessarily know how a VCR works. You know what I mean? I remember when my family got our first microwave, and these are all things that there's just this whole different perspective of what is important to them, what they value compared to what I value. And the communications habits are completely different. So our generation, we grew up that advertising was truthful, that you could trust it, that an organization is making this statement, you can count on that statement being true. And we're seeing a lot of research that especially late millennials and Gen Z have only 14% of them think trust advertising by brands. Which is a frightening thought when you're trying to promote yourself as but there's ways to get around that. And I try to talk about that a lot in this because it shows you the value of the actual employee themselves, getting them to a point where they want to be that advocate.
Right. And I think that ties really nicely into somebody who wants to be that advocate for your organization, right? And somebody who wants to be part of that, you talk a lot about vision, right? And the culture of organizations. So those are two big things that literally we could sit here for the next 4 hours and talk about. So I think it's how does that play in? It's like, for instance, you're working with a client who's coming in and say, help us.
Sure.
do you step back and look at culture and vision before you dive in? What's that look like for you?
Sure. So a lot of times we'll try to go through that employment branding, discovery, development, distribution type of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And we are asking the question. We typically do one-on-one interviews. And it's because that's when you get the opportunity to kind of dive deep. We found in talent attraction, focus groups are sometimes really hard. And the reason being is, especially if they're employees that know each other, whoever the highest ranking employee is the one who's going to answer the most questions. Even though you try to guide it, you try to make sure that they don't.
Because they're in a group, right?
Yeah. Nobody wants to be the one who was talking negatively about this or talking negatively about that. You have to get to that point where people can tell you what is the ugly truth, right? And those are opportunities. When you actually can open up the door and see what's in the closet, you finally have the opportunity to clean out the closet. So it's one of those things that it's incredibly important to have those conversations. Now, don't get me wrong, there are organizations that maybe they're just kicking off, or maybe they've gone through something really horrible, and they're recovering, right? Or they're just trying to build. You still need to kind of understand what are you going to be in the future. You need to count on your leadership team at that point to say, this is who we are, and we're going to model it. And this is how we're going to model it. This is how we're going to show it. This is how we're going to live it out day in and day out. You have to change your messaging at that point, because you're talking about this is where we're going. We're not there yet, but we're going there. And this is an opportunity to join an organization, walk down that path with us, help us become that employer that we want to be. Difficult things happen. We've all seen it. Organizations that maybe there was something that took place with the senior most leadership, they resigned, and now the whole organization's a mess. But there is still opportunity even in that, if you're willing to be authentic about the situation that you're in and say, join us on the path.
Yeah, that pathway, I think, is for the individuals that work with me. I can wholeheartedly say they're interested in that pathway. Right? They're interested in being part of, because if we as an organization come out and say, we're the greatest organization, we never make mistakes, instantly I can see the people coming in and saying, that's going to be an impossible job. Like I'm going to go in and they're going to expect like perfection from me. I don't want.
They'll never innovate.
They'll never innovate.
Never
right?
innovate, because innovation only comes from failure.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, you have to. If you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah.
So you've got to try. You've got to. If you're not willing to take that risk to do something great, you're always going to be just the road.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. You talk about vision really succinctly and really clearly. That what you mentioned earlier about Monday morning, right? Yeah. What does Monday morning look like, right? And if that vision is something that lives in the hearts and minds of all the people that are waking up on Monday morning to start their work, right? And all of a sudden it's like, I get to do this today, right?
Even to be that I don't hate Mondays.
Right.
Right? I mean, nobody wakes up every single Monday morning and is like, let's go.
Yeah.
But when you can wake up every single Monday morning and say, all right, I'm going to make some coffee and I'm going to get at this.
Yeah.
I've had jobs where it's Sunday at 1:00 in the afternoon, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about what the next day is going to be like, and I'm like, I'm not ready for that. I think a lot of us we've had those jobs. If you can build that organization to a point where your people are, let's go,
and that's okay, right?
That's okay.
It's okay.
Absolutely.
Maybe your Monday's not going to be real, but you know what? We're right there with you.
I have a ton of Monday morning meetings. For me, every Monday morning starts off at I think I have 4 meetings that are kind of set every single week. But it's just a Monday, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a Monday, but I love my job, and I love what I get to do and how I get to help people and organizations. And so I think there's real opportunity there in helping people to understand that. We've said to people at Aloysius Butler and Clark, we're trying to attract great talent. This isn't a place that you're going to wake up on Monday morning and be like,
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is going to be the place that you're like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go do some good things.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's talk about up.
Up. The unexpected and positive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think about like the experience people may have when they have an opportunity to learn about your organization. You share a story about a booth.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to share that story here, but maybe there's another story.
Happy to. Well,
yeah.
and
So
that whole story is based on, and I just had meetings here a couple of weeks ago with another client that we're talking to. We're just starting in this engagement with them, and they talk about the fact that we get people here, and they can experience what it's like here. They sign. They want to be here. And the whole concept, that you're referring to in the booth is, I heard this from a client, and I said, well, then why aren't you taking this experience to the people? And so we redesigned their entire booth experience to take what it meant to be there physically, because they were in a beautiful region. How do you take that experience to people and get them to actually experience it, whether you're in Kansas at a trade show or at a national meeting in California or whatever it may be, you're taking that experience to them.
yeah.
And incredibly successful. It's something that is unexpected, positive.
Mm-hmm.
You walk through in this instance, you walk through a trade show hall,
Yeah.
and you don't expect to see, upstate Vermont with all the trees and a faux campfire and Adirondack chairs sitting in a booth. Right. But all of a sudden, it's getting your attention, and it's putting a smile on your face, and that organization even looked at using the Adirondack chairs, their foldable Adirondack chairs, as the giveaway.
Oh, nice, yeah.
For, hey, thank you for signing up and connecting with us, and we'll put your name in for these Adirondack chairs. We'll ship it to you,
And that really gives people a sense, if that is their thing, that's the vibe, the culture they're looking for, the environment they're looking for, you've made that deep connection. Yeah. And you know what? It works on the other way. If somebody comes in and says, boy, that's just not for me.
Oh, 100%. It's the push and pull, right? You never want to attract everybody.
Right.
You want to attract the right people. Too many organizations, too many organizations really say we just need that warm body.
Yeah.
And wow, is that destructive?
Mm-hmm.
It's destroys cultures, destroys cohesiveness within teams, and then inevitably they end up leaving and just like burnt rubble behind them. So
yes.
The more that you can make sure that you're attracting the people that value the same thing you value, it's critically important.
Yeah. So let's talk about culture, because I think it's one of the things that that most of us in any organization, it can be hard to talk about what that really truly, how you speak about it.
Sure.
Right? How you promote it. Right? And so
yes.
To you, what does that mean? How and are there tactics that you can think of? Because again, it's not a how-to book, but I also think downstream somebody may say, okay, Shawn, this is great. I get it. Like we're talking about culture, but I still don't know. Like, how do I tactically handle that?
And it's funny because I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day that said, somebody was like, can we just take the word culture out of our vernacular? And I'm just like, no. Because it's the most critical piece of attraction. And the best way to speak to culture is and it's got to start at the top down. And what I mean by that is your senior-most leaders have to be willing to model what they want from a cultural perspective in the organization every day. It's it's almost like parenting, right?
Yeah.
How do I want my children to grow up? How do I want my children to behave in certain situations? How do I want them to react to certain difficult situations? How do I want them to approach challenging things? How do I want them to approach blessings? You know what I mean? All of these different things. I've got to model that as parent. To a certain extent, senior-most leadership folks within our organizations need to model those things to all the employees. This is how we're going to act when things are hard. This is how we're going to act when things are amazing. And to a certain extent, we need to look at it and say, I do these things every day. This is how I'm successful. These are the things that I continue to point back to, continue going in this direction. So part of that, or the biggest part of that, I should say, is that living out, that modeling of the culture from the senior most leadership people, because you'll find that absolutely works its way down. But the other piece is very intentional in how you communicate that. And so what I mean by that is, we had a client, smaller company within a huge company, who looked at how do we take those values and actually put it in place to where every single day people are going to recognize and remember the core components of what we are and why we are. And we took it all the way into their people team, and we really walked through how do we, if you're going to send out a communication to the organization, how do you tie it back to one of the 5 pillars that are most important to us? So it got all the way down to the point where they had to go through security training, and it was, my goodness, who wants to sit through security training? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry if you're a security expert and this is what you do. Those of us that are not in that, not exactly something that we're looking forward to as part of our day. Right. But they took it all the way down to the point where they started off those security trainings with, we're here to talk about security, but let me explain to you why we're talking about this. One of our principles is making sure that we're providing the safest possible workplace for our employees. It's important to us here. So as part of that, we want to show you what we're doing, why we're doing, how you need to be part of that, so that as an organization, we are keeping everybody safe.
Yep.
All of a sudden, this now matters, right? Mm-hmm. And it's in emails from the leadership about certain topics and tying it back to, this is why we're doing this. It can be, hey, we're going to support this charity, and we're going to go walk in this event, this charity. This is why it's important to us.
And that's so distinct from, I think, what those of us who are leading organizations have seen, and maybe even participated in as employees, where culture is looked at environmentally. Right, it's like, oh, well, we've got...
It's taken for granted.
Right,
It's taken for granted.
Yeah, you've mentioned in the book, it's like, oh, yeah, well, we've got the foosball table, we've got the beanbag chairs, we've got, the coffee maker. So our culture is like rock solid. Like, we have a wonderful place.
And it's so just superficial.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you find is you're going to lose that person who joined for that reason, because somebody else has a newer foosball table and is willing to pay them $1 an hour more. Right. So it's like, it's when you base it off of superficial things, don't be surprised when people leave for superficial reasons.
Yes. And so culture, and I think I'm hearing you right, it sounds generic to say this, culture is everything. It is the way that, and I'm kind of repeating what you said, but I think it's worth repeating. It's the way that we meet, the way that we engage each other, the way that we are to each other when we're opening a new account. It's the way that we are when that new account says, sorry, but no, we're not going to continue. It's the way that we handle the ups and downs of business. It's all of that.
It's all of that. It's even the relationships between team members and even the people that are outside of your team. Coming alongside somebody when they're running something that's difficult. Are you going to be the person who kind of points the finger and says they did something wrong? Or are you going to come alongside and say, let's talk about what happened and let's figure out a way that, so in the future just never happens again.
Right. And I think that sets this up for well, that's why you can't moment for me. And I think that's why we leaders, organizations can't treat recruitment like it's a marketing effort, like it's the product effort, right? And the reason that I say that is because you talk a lot about who are the best people to share that story. And what I say is, wow, if you tried to put that into a visual, or you tried to put that into a graphic, or you tried to put that into a 30-second video from the CEO talking about that, flat.
Unauthentic,
right?
Unauthentic.
But if I put it in the hands of the people who are part of the organization and say, tell your story, that's when that happens, right?
100%. So I think we would agree. As human beings, storytellers and story listeners. It's what engages us. It's what we remember stories far more than just about anything else, right? And so when you look at it from that perspective, I'm a huge believer that the most powerful thing that you can do to attract more and better talent into your organization is to have those employees that are empowered to speak, not because you've told them what to say, not because you're writing a script. It's got to be unscripted. It's got to be authentic. Those employees who are willing to say, I love it here. I'm sorry that you've got a case of the Mondays, but I don't. You should really think about coming over here. And that culture and the reasons why you're going to be different from every single person. I jokingly say a lot of times millennials and Gen Z sniff out marketing speak better than any generations before them. They know when marketing script, and they'll be the first ones to poke fun out of it and make a meme of it the moment you put something out. But they recognize authenticity. And I think when you can give people that opportunity to just be authentic. As a marketer, boy, that's hard. Let me explain. Because as a marketer, we want to control that narrative.
Yes.
We want to be like, no, I don't want that person saying that. We've got to fix that. Because if you're living the culture the right way, they understand what you really stand for. You may not like the exact way that they've said it, but the fact that they've said it in a way that the marketing team wouldn't have is actually what's going to resonate. Make people be like, it's a good place.
Yeah. You just made me think of something that we didn't plan to talk about, and if I pitch this out there and there's no legs to this, this conversation,
by all means.
So it also makes me think that if we think about where we're headed in terms of job needs and unfilled positions, there's also, while we may say Gen Z and millennials are kind of thirsty for that and ready for it, there's also this aspect I think about, like maybe my generation wouldn't be. Maybe the 50-sums would actually have a really hard time like shifting their thought about the way that the new hiring methodologies are attracting. And maybe we would say, that seems like a hard organization to work for, or I hate to use the words like, oh, that's soft stuff, right? I'm being kind of like I'm taking another perspective.
Please.
And so I don't know. I don't know if I want to work there. I want the person that comes in and says like, this is what you're going to do, and this is what, and I don't know.
And so here's the thing. Even with the way that I'm talking about this, there are still going to be organizations that model is who they are culturally.
True.
And being authentic about that, there's actually right now, and my son, who is 19, getting ready to turn 20, brought this to my attention. There's a couple of groups that are out there, and they're like, you will work 60 plus hours a week.
Okay.
You should not expect to have great work-life balance. You should not do this, but you are going to make a lot of money, and you are going to be very successful, but don't come here thinking that you're going to have a great quality of life outside of work.
That's brutal honesty, isn't it?
Brutal honesty. And they're getting candidates because there are people that are like, you know what? I can do that for 3 years. I can do that for a couple of years of my life, and I can set myself up, and I can, it's going to stink for, outside of work, but I'm going to set myself up to do really well. And it's about the authenticity, the truth behind what to expect when you get there. I would say even our generation appreciates truthfulness. And I think, I joke about this a little bit in the book, or talk about it a little bit in the book, is, like public relations, how it originally started.
Yes.
And then, originally it was about the dialogue. It was, hey, help us make our product better. Tell us what we're doing, so that we can make a better product. And then, we get into the 70s, 80s, to 90s, and it's PR telling us, no, this is what you're going to like about our product. And social media has now brought it back to where we finally have that tool that gives us the back and forth. So it's interesting in that way because we finally have that voice. We finally have that opportunity to hear in an authentic way.
Yes.
Which I think is every generation, I think, appreciates that.
I agree. And it was fun to explore that other perspective because I do think that we want to make sure that both of those kind of environments, if they're right and they're authentic and the candidate is aligned, right?
Giving them what they want.
That's exactly.
And it's it goes again, push and pull.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for telling me, because I don't want to work 60 hours a week for you and not be able to take time off to go spend it with my kids, right? So be open, be honest, and go from there.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about creativity, because I think, as you kind of round out the book, I think chapter 11, I think, if I remember. Test it.
Maybe, may not be. I don't remember the chapter numbers very well.
So you talk about creativity from a more global perspective, that it's not just about the pretty pictures and how creativity plays not only into the organization, but how it plays in this process, and just kind of want to give you a chance to like talk a little bit more about how you see that relating to being built to attract.
I think creativity is incredibly important. And I joke about this a little bit in the beginning of the chapter, because I grew up as the kid who was always loving to draw, loving to paint, loving to do all those things. And early on in my life, I always had the people like, "Oh, you're so creative," and I took it as this huge compliment. Like, awesome, I'm creative. And then you start to get more into like the middle grades of school, and you start having people say, "Oh, you're creative," and you start realizing that they're not necessarily meaning it as the positive that you once took it as. And then it's you get into your careers, and the people that there's like, "Oh, they're creative." It's looked at as you're not supposed to be creative unless you're part of like the art team, right, or the design team. And I think we need to fight that with every single piece of our being.
Yes.
You want to understand how to become AI proof. Be creative in your thinking, and it's not about how do I make this picture different. It's about thinking creatively about the challenges. Thinking creatively and differently about every component, right? So what are the different ways that I can get in front of the person that I'm trying to influence or attract? What are the different messages that may actually resonate with them in a creative way? So, there's huge importance in don't just do it the way that it's done.
Do you find, have you had clients that where leadership also has a perspective on creative? The creative is that kind of, I don't know, right? Because I think you're hinting around in your expression. I hope you caught his facial expression, right? So, he's creative. Yeah. So there's that aspect like, well, he's unreliable, I think is the word you might use.
I mean, there was a part of it that, that early on in my career, you would be working for an organization, and there was the creative guy in the department who's also part of a band.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, well, don't give him any of the hard work, because he gets in at like 3:00 in the morning because he was just doing shows, and you can't count on him. He's one of those creative types, And I think they're missing out so much. The fact that every single one of us should be a creative type. We should all be thinking about, are there more unique, different ways that we can approach challenges,
Yes.
It's one of the reasons that we've talked about the importance of inclusivity for having the right people at the table. There's an incredible value in making sure that I'm not sitting at a table with a whole bunch of people that are my age when I'm trying to think about how I'm going to attract 25-year-olds into an organization.
Yes.
Right? It's that whole concept of always challenging what the thinking and always trying to think outside of the box.
Yeah, and creativity, I think, is what's interesting about you. I mentioned the word perspective a lot in the book, right? And then you bring in creativity. There's a huge relationship, right? Being perspectival, taking other perspectives, is part of the creative process.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and I think the way that you've blended, that in the book, in really that smooth reading way, like just it was like, wow, it just brought up some really, really good mental model reframing for me, and I know it will to the readers as well.
It's funny. A good example of that took place just here over the last maybe over the last year. Everybody's always asking, well, how do I use social media for recruitment? And it's funny because certain organizations are like, well, we'll just pay for ads. We'll put ads on the feed,
right?
Whatever. And I don't know about you, but I pretty much skip through all of that. I think a lot of people do. When you sit the 21-year-old down at the table and say, how are you using social media? They're like, oh, I don't even I don't even have Facebook. Okay, well, what are you using? I'm on Instagram. Right, so what do you do on Instagram? And they start talking about it. And they're doom scrolling the videos, right? So my age, I don't want to think about doom scrolling videos on Instagram, but it makes us realize that if we can get that authentic content and actually put it in a place where those candidates are, now we're starting to make that influence and getting them to realize that thinking about it more creatively, putting it where creativity is just incredible.
Yeah. So last kind of topic, because maybe this gets into what your next book may or may not be. Maybe I'm planting the seed. So you don't talk about interview.
Sure.
Right? And that's fair, I think, to say you don't talk about that.
I don't get into that tactical component.
Right,
Sure.
right. I really actually appreciated that, because I think that's that's like a whole other, like that's another phase. That's another, it's related, strongly related. Obviously, it's part of this. And I think the reason I really noticed that in the book, because those were the experiences I had in my history that were horrible, right? That interview just really fell apart. I have one that I'd love to have your reactions. But I remember interviewing, I was in school technology back in my early days, and I had an interview that wasn't described well to me in terms of like what to expect.
Sure.
Right. And of course it was the suit and tie day. You walk in, you have a suit and tie. And it was actually when I arrived, they actually gave me instructions to walk into like a back door to like the school. And I had no idea where I was walking into. But it turned out as I flung the door open into this, what I thought would be like a hallway, it was the back door to the meeting room. So literally I had like flung the door open, and when I walk in, there's 20, 30 people sitting in like a U shape, right? And there was a person standing there saying, "Oh, great, you're next." And
oh my
literally,
goodness.
literally walked in the door, and then it was like, if you have a presentation, plug it into the machine. Well, of course, the machine and my computer didn't work.
They're not working.
Yeah.
There's always technology issues. You're getting ready to do interpretive dance, basically.
Basically, yeah. And I remember saying the most awful thing in the interview, and it was because my computer had, like, back in the Windows days, had the blue screen of death, if you remember the blue screen of death. Right?
Yes, yeah.
And I remember starting my interview off as a technology person in a school district saying, "Well, the blue screen of death isn't really what you want during an interview."
So here's the unfortunate thing. You were working with a recruiter and a talent acquisition team that didn't set you up for success.
Right.
And in organizations that do it really well, that recruiter and TA team are supposed to be the advocate for the candidate. So they should be advocating to the candidate on behalf of the organization, but they should be advocating for the candidate within the organization. Because if they've done it right, had the conversations with you, and they feel that you're a really good fit, they should never put you into a situation where you're walking in.
Yeah. So I think maybe there's a whole other next book for you. I absolutely, again, Built to Attract. So how do people connect with you?
It's on Amazon.
Amazon,
Yep, it's available on Amazon. It's probably the easiest way to find it there. I'll get you the link, and
Perfect.
please feel free to share it.
Well, this was a great opportunity to sit with you and talk something that I think you are right, the time is needed. I love the approach that you had. It was a joy to talk to you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep,
Appreciate
absolutely. Yep. Thanks, Shawn.
Thanks so much.
Yep.